Hey, everybody, we've got a lot of information we want to pass on to you. We've got updates on the new tax laws and what they mean to us. We got an update on Israel kicking out the black Jews, and we're looking at law enforcement from a different angle. That is news from the inside. We got another congressional story about congressional Jews who think that some black Democrats should resign because they had conversations with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Also, wait till you see what the TSA has in store for you the next time you get ready to fly. As always, we have a real good, heartwarming, good news story. And we're also going to touch on a subject we never thought we'd be talking about in this program, but we are. So check us out. These stories and more coming your way right now. There's a movement going on in New York City right now. Some black policemen say when they are out of uniform and in civilian clothes, they fear encounters with white police officers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whisper2Scream March Madness 2018. That's what we're calling this edition, March Madness. My name is Bernard, and I am your host. Now, let's get right into our story update portion where we bring you up to date on a previous story because stories are more than just the first page. In another broadcast, we talked about the deep corporate tax cuts. And just like we said, executives and their boards are rewarded for how much they maximize quarterly returns for big investors. Now, the extra cash that they get will go towards dividends and stocks and stock buybacks rather than expanding their workforce. If you have been following us, you know that buku funds would be poured into robotics and artificial intelligence. And what does that mean? It means robots and artificial intelligence systems will replace humans in the job market. So how will folks secure the well-being of their families? Meaning, how will we keep a roof over our heads and put food into the bellies of our families? I keep saying artificial intelligence is here to stay. Robots will be doing our jobs. They won't complain. They will work until they break down. They don't require lunch breaks, medical insurance, vacations, and they won't arbitrarily go on a strike. So get a grip, people. What are your plans for remaining productive in the future? As they say, you got to stay woke. Now, you might remember another previous story that we talked about in a previous edition. We talked about Israel giving black Jews till April the 1st to get out of Israel. Well, it seems Israel is moving ahead with that plan. So the Jews who are black will be given around $3,500 and a plane ticket to go anywhere outside of Israel. Like, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. For those black Jews who remain, they will be incarcerated indefinitely. We are going to follow up on this story and update it on a coming edition. For those of you who watched our last broadcast, you know we talked about America's law enforcement. We also realized that one show about it was not enough, and we decided to explore different facets of our police force. Now, since we are calling this broadcast our March Madness broadcast, it's only right that we talk about the madness and corruption in the ranks of our police force. Now, let's talk about racial prejudice. Even among the men in blue, more and more cases are coming to the court system with minorities complaining of impropriety within the police force. There are issues with promotions, assignments, and disciplinary actions levied heavier and longer on minorities on the force. Also, black and minority policemen are brutalized by their white counterparts. Now, Larry Jackson, he is an off-duty New York Police Department officer, was awarded $15 million after he was beaten by white officers, even after he identified himself and flashed his badge. I don't know of any stories where this happens in reverse, where white cops are brutalized by their black fellow cops. Not to say it doesn't happen. I just haven't heard of it. Now, black and minority police persons are suing police departments for racial discrimination. It's going on in Seattle right now, St. Louis, Fort Worth, and actually all over the United States.
This video of the choking death of Eric Garner ignited protests across the country, alleging police brutality against communities of color. But one group was quietly overlooked: black police officers.
I'm Michelle Conlon in New York, and I've been speaking with black officers on the NYPD, many of whom tell me that they feel they have more in common with Eric Garner than with their fellow white police officers.
I used to give orientation for the rookies when they came out of the academy, and I would tell them that I'm more scared of you than I am of the bad guys.
Harold Thomas was a decorated NYPD detective for nearly 30 years. One night in 2012, he was stopped by police officers and, despite identifying himself as a cop, was slammed against the hood of his car, handcuffed, and arrested. Like Eric Garner, part of his arrest was caught on camera.
No, that's a cop. Slammed my head on the hood of my car, spun me around, threw me to the, grabbed me by the seat of my pants, threw me to the ground, injuring my head. They proceeded to manhandle me, rough me up as they put handcuffs on me.
A department dispute ensued after the incident. A variety of accusations were thrown at Thomas. Now he's suing the NYPD and the city of New York for the arrest.
Reuters interviewed 25 African-American police officers, some retired, some still serving, and all but one of them said that when out of uniform, they had been racially profiled, including some kind of rough justice.
What? Police fear police? But on our next broadcast, we'll focus on 5 incidents where white people aimed guns at police and weren't shot. And focus on 5 incidents where black people had no weapons and were shot or killed. So that will be on our next broadcast. When we will cover stories where police have saved lives and helped in the communities and who helped to tear down the stigma that all cops are crooks. This just in, the mayor pro tem of the city of Seaside, California. He is also a reserve officer for the Sand City Police Department. His name is Dennis Alexander. He also teaches a public safety class at a high school. Well, he brought a loaded gun to a classroom. He wanted to demonstrate that knowledge about guns make them safe. During his demonstration, the gun went off and injured several students, hitting one in the neck from fragments. First of all, it is illegal to bring firearms on school grounds, period. He had no business with that gun in the classroom. Now, after the incident, classes were resumed as normal, but here's what happened. The injured boy's parents were not notified about the incident and didn't know until the boy came home with blood on his clothes. No one told the boy's parents. They had to call the police themselves to report the incident. Now, so far, no charges have been brought against this teacher, and it seems like they are hoping this whole matter would just go away. I want to talk a little bit more about gun control. Since we're talking about gun control, I want to talk about Israel and gun control. Israel is always under the threat of attack, and yet they have far less deaths from firearms than we have here in the United States. Israel has enacted laws to curb gun violence. Their citizens go through extensive vetting. 40% of gun permit applications are rejected. If they pass the scrutiny, they can only own one gun, and that is a handgun. There are also limits on ammunition. Even Israeli soldiers who are off duty on the weekends, etc., are restricted from carrying firearms. So that's mostly to cut down on suicide from its ranks. Also, permit holders must renew their permits annually and must report any change in the status to the government. And when a gun owner dies, that family must turn that firearm back over to the government. Now, the government relies on police and military force. It does not tolerate good guys with guns or civil guard volunteers. It's a similar situation in Japan. Japan has more than 127 million people, but it rarely sees more than 10, count them. It rarely sees more than 10 deaths from firearms a year. Permit holders are vetted and also undergo a mental exam at a hospital. Then relatives and neighbors are asked about the applicant's behavior. Now, if they secure a permit for a firearm, they can only buy shotguns and air rifles, no handguns. And every 3 years, permit holders must go through this process again. Israel and Japan believe less guns means less deaths by firearms. Not more counseling, but less guns. And what do you think? Can a system like this work in America? Please leave your comments below. We'd appreciate hearing from you. All right, folks, pay attention. Guess what the TSA is doing now at the airports? You and I, flying domestically, can be randomly picked for a search of our electronic gear. That means you will have to open your cell phones, your laptops, tablets to be examined by the TSA. That means they can look at your personal pictures, your notes, documents, Facebook, contacts, whatever they want to see. And they don't have to have probable cause. And wait for it, they don't have to explain why they are doing it. Now, the ACLU, that's the American Civil Liberties Union, is bringing a lawsuit against the TSA for this practice. They have petitioned the TSA for an explanation of this new procedure. So far, the TSA has not responded. And remember, we're not whining. We are speaking up for our rights that we have as citizens. Our rights are what makes us Americans. Now, I know most of you have heard about this next story, and I got a comment on it. A grown white man spat on a black infant in a restaurant. It happened at a Hooters restaurant in Overland Park, Kansas. The boy's family was attending a birthday party there when the child wandered off to a nearby table. The white man yelped, "Get that nigger up off the floor." Do you hear what I said? And then yelped more racial insults at the baby. And then he actually spat on him. When the police arrived, he told the police, "It's okay, I'm a firefighter." Like his being a firefighter gave him a license to assault a baby. What's going on in the minds of some of the people in this country? Now, Hooters has made it clear it does not support that kind of behavior and plans to cooperate fully with the police during this investigation. Wow. Take a look at this picture. Diana Belitich won't be teaching classes at Crystal River Middle School anymore, anytime soon anyway. She's being investigated because of a podcast she hosted titled Unapologetic under the name Tiana Kalachoff. During a recent podcast, she boasted about bringing her white nationalist beliefs into her middle school classroom and talked about how she hid her ideology from school administrators. She goes on to say that most terrorist attacks will continue until Muslims are eradicated from the face of the earth. Now, I think that's pretty radical. Who are these people who feel they can make generalities about whole groups of people and then pass judgment on them? Speaking of judging whole groups of people by their own personal prejudice, some members of the Republican Jewish Coalition have demanded that 7 Democratic members of Congress who have been reported to have ties to Louis Farrakhan, well, they want them to resign. The 7 include Congressman Keith Ellison, Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, Danny Davis, Andre Carson, Gregory Meeks, and Al Green. Now, allegedly, the above have sat down with Louis Farrakhan for personal meetings with him. He is the leader of a group called the Nation of Islam, for those of you who don't know. Now, apparently, these congressional Jews regard Minister Farrakhan as an anti-Semitic. But now, some of the names that we've just talked about have sat down and are friends of Israel and have been regular speakers at AIPAC conferences and other pro-Israel events. The issue is that, like it or not, the Nation of Islam has and still is a positive force in the black community. Through the years, as a group, they have gone into blighted areas to correct wrongs, to rid areas of drugs and senseless crime. They have taken broken men of color and others and instilled them with self-esteem and self-respect. They advocate pro-family, pro-life, and pro-community. They are always clean. They never carry weapons and are instructed to never be the aggressor in word or in deed. While individually persons may not agree with everything that Louis Farrakhan has to say, few of us take the time to research the validity of what he says anyway. He's done too much for the black community to be denounced just because outside groups demand it. You know, that sounds a little bit like an editorial, and that's what it was. Okay, can you say the word transgender 3 times rapidly? Well, Spelman College, a renowned historically black women's college, has announced it will join other historically all-women's colleges like Wellesley, Smith, and Barnard. And what do they all have in common? Besides women, beginning this fall of 2018, it will allow transgendered females to enroll at their school. This new policy caters to students who consistently live and self-identify as women, regardless of their gender assignment at birth. Now, Spelman College says academic excellence is still its core mission. In other transgendered news, take a look at this picture. Well, the woman in this picture is a man, and the man in this picture is a woman. They're legally married. They were on the Ellen Show recently. Both were in the military. One continues to serve in the armed forces. And just one more pic. Here is another pic here of this couple. This is another couple. The pregnant man is a woman, and the woman is a man. They wanted to have children before they did a total sex reassignment. So I'm not judging. I'm just saying this is what's going on in our world. You know, we like to close out each segment, each edition with some good news stories. Well, this waitress, a teenager, working to pay her way through college, her name is Ebony Williams, just working her shift at a Waffle House in Lamarck, Texas, did a simple thing. An elderly customer sitting at the counter told her, and these are his words, my hands don't work too good. He was also on oxygen and struggling to breathe, so she immediately began to cut up the meat on his plate so it would be easier for him to enjoy his meal. She was more than happy to do it. Well, someone saw her deed, captured it in pictures, and posted it on social media, and the picture and story went viral. Turns out Texas University heard about the ambitious journey of this high school graduate, and it has come through with a $16,000 college scholarship and the help of a counselor to guide Miss Williams in her plan to major in business management. Now, that's a good story. But wait! On top of that, the mayor of Lamarck proclaimed March 8, 2018, a day in her honor. He announced the creation of Ebony, Nene, that's her nickname, Williams Day. See, you never know who's watching and appreciating your good works. So that ought to wrap it up for this edition of Whisper2Scream. We just want to make sure you're armed with information to succeed in your personal lives and in society. So again, as always, we say stay woke and be blessed.